everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am here to talk about February releases. I mean, halfway through the month of February. It's a little late, but I mean, there are still some that are still coming out, and some of these I might talk about may have already come out, so you don't have to wait for them, so that's a benefit. Just get over the fact that I'm uploading this like halfway through the month. Okay, we're good now. So it's been a little bit since I have done any of the releases videos. It's probably been a couple months. I used to do these every single month, and life got crazy around the holidays and hasn't really slowed down since, so I'm just now getting back into the swing of things. But in case you're new around here, when I do releases videos, I generally kind of list the really big releases or the really big sequels that are coming out, and then I go into like 5 kind of lesser known or more interesting sounding books, or ones that I am just really excited about and want to give you more details about. So let's get into the bigger books and the sequels. So the first one that everyone is obviously already talking about because it is already out is King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. This came out on February 7th, and this is the third and I believe final, I think it's a trilogy, book in the Red Queen trilogy. But yes, this came out on February 7th. The next book that people are probably very excited is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This comes out on February 21st and is the third book in the Shades of London series, I believe is the actual series name. I think so. But, you know, A Darker Shade of Magic, that series. The next sequel I want to talk about is Rise of Fire by Sophie Jordan. This is a sequel to Reign of Shadows, which is a book that came out last year, which I feel like it didn't get the hype that it deserves. I love Sophie Jordan. She is such a good, quick, enjoyable YA author. So this is the second and final book in this duology, and in my opinion, this is kind of a Rapunzel retelling, but it's just a fantasy story, which is great. I just love it. So this comes out on February 7th. The last sequel that I want to talk about is Starfall by Melissa Landers. This also came out on February 7th. I missed a bunch, I know. But this is the sequel to Starflight, which was a release last year, and I believe this was a debut book last year, and I adored this book. This was like sci-fi Firefly meets pirates and swashbuckling. I just adored the story. It was super fun, and I can't wait to read this book. So the first book that I really want to talk about is Winter Song, and this is by S.J. Jones, and this came out on February 7th. Again, a lot of books came out then, but this book has been one of my most highly anticipated books, and I have an arc of it, and I have not read it, guys. I know, I am just failing in the booktube world, but I've had an arc of this since like August of last year, and I just haven't read it. What am I doing with my life? I don't know. But this is a retelling, which I know everybody is kind of still either really into or kind of sick of. This is one that I'm so excited for, mainly because I really love villain backstories or villain retellings and just getting really into the dark and gritty of crazy, dark, villainous characters. This book is about the Goblin King from Labyrinth. Yeah, I know. That's all I'm really gonna say, because that's all you really need to know, but hello. It's about this dude. That dude, right there. It's his story, and I am so excited for it. Next book that I want to talk about is another one that I have an arc of, and I have not read it. It is Empress of a Thousand Skies. This is by Rhoda Belleza, and this just sounds great. This pretty much, to me, sounds like a awesome, fast-paced fantasy story wrapped up in like a sci-fi blanket. Like, it just is combining the best of both worlds. It has the very cliche YA fantasy storyline where it's a girl who is seeking to reclaim her throne and just take down everybody that is in her way. And we're following a guy, clearly gonna be the love interest here, who is accused of killing her. Falsely, obviously, because she's alive, but they pretty much team up together to take on the galaxy and all of these dynasties and kingdoms, and it just sounds so good. It sounds like such an awesome fantasy story, but it's set in space. Yeah, I'd sign me up. That sounds great. So again, this comes out on February 7th. The next book I want to talk about is called Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas. I initially was really drawn to this book because it looks just like the Sin Eater's Daughter series, where it has like a kingdom inside of like a test tube or a vial or something, but it is not. It's a completely different thing. But I mean, cover appeal, guys. Cover appeal. This comes out on February 21st and just sounds awesome. It's another fantasy. I am just living for all of this fantasy that is coming out. But this story is following Freya, who is 23rd in line to the throne of her kingdom. So she clearly never plans on ruling or coming anything close to royalty. and just pretty much wants to spend her days studying in her laboratory and being a science nerd, which sounds great. And that all comes to a crushing halt when there's a huge massacre of all royalty at like this big royal dinner. I'm picturing Game of Thrones type massacre where everybody's dead and all of a sudden she is put in the throne. It's pretty much her story of trying to prove herself that she is worthy to rule and to solve this big massacre and murder that happened, and it just sounds like a bucket of fun. Coming out on Valentine's Day, February 14th, is Gilded Cage, and this is by Vic James. This sounds very different and somewhat dystopian, but with a very different vibe to it. This is set in a world that is run by equals. These are essentially aristocrats who have magical powers, who kind of enslave the commoners to work for them, and it just kind of sounds like that basic dystopian with a twist storyline. We are following Abby, who is a servant to one of the richest families of equals, and she starts to fall for one of their sons, which is obviously a no-no, but she also starts to uncover a lot of their secrets. But we're also following her brother, and he is pretty much enslaved in this awful, oppressive factory town, and he, I believe, is going to start a rebellion. So I think it's going to be a dual perspective type story, and it just sounds great. It's an awesome cover. I'm so excited for this. The last book that I want to talk about is The Hate You Give, and this is by Angie Thomas. This comes out on February 28th. This sounds like it's just going to be very impactful and powerful and important to our community just to have this story told. But this book was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and I've heard some hype buzzing ever since this book was announced. I believe it's already being made into a film. But this book is following Star, who has a really hard time balancing her really poor and impoverished neighborhood that she lives in with her really high-class high school that she goes to. And all of this comes to a crashing halt when she sees her best friend get murdered by a police officer, and she is the only witness and has to testify. Obviously, there are going to be consequences that are going to be problematic for her each way that she could testify, and it's pretty much going to be her internal battle over justice and what should be done versus what can be done. So it sounds like it's going to be very important to read, and I'm very intrigued to see how the community takes in this story. So this comes out on February 28th, so stick around for that. Those are the 5 books that I am most excited about in the month of February. There's some good stuff coming out this year. I'm gonna get really excited about doing these releases videos because there's a lot of big releases this year. So I hope you guys are reading some amazing books, and I will see you in my next video.